right, next we can get into citrus trees.
Yes. So, you know, our parks director is a gardener at Seoul. He wanted citrus trees from around the world, and we didn't have a lot of space. So we put them in these garden beds. Not ideal. However, the experiment is working so far, and we're pruning them in a way to make sure that they don't go into the paths. Because the soil here is more of a potting soil consistency, we had to really make sure the soil structure was a little not as solid as the clay soil that we have here in Santa Clara. And also we know that trees in general, their roots don't only go deep, but they spread wide. And so it's not the ideal place, but if you have I've been in many backyards that are concrete heavy, and there are types of citrus trees and other trees that can do well in pots and raised beds. And here you see a lot of the different types of trees from around the world. Those trees are only 3 years old. My favorite is the Australian finger lime. It's a tiny bush with a lot of spikes. And I really enjoy those citrus trees back there. And we get a lot of interest from people when we have our citrus tree classes. So I suggest that. And here's our mini orchard where we have plum trees, apple trees, and peach trees. We tried to mimic the Valley of Hearts, the old Silicon Valley, what we were growing here back in the day. And all of these trees will provide at different types of the year. These trees will grow large. And if your client is considering trees, there are many philosophies on how to maintain these trees. One is to chop them as soon as you plant them so that you can now guide your leader branches, have a fresh start on the tree. Chop them at the bottom, and now the new growth, you can kind of pick and choose. At this garden, we decided to not chop them when we planted them. We decided to just kind of guide them along. Every tree has different pruning qualities, different pruning methods to them. You need to do your research. Some trees, the fruit grows on old branches, while other trees, the fruit grows on new branches. You have your bowl-shaped design. You have your straight. When you're choosing the tree, you want to also consider those things. Maybe do you need a dwarf tree? And also when you're pruning the trees, you want to make sure that you're always able to harvest from the tree so you don't need ladders. And so pruning trees is a whole nother lesson for the edible person, but I do recommend fruit trees for anyone. A lot of people think that edible takes a lot of work, but I just wanted to suggest some perennials here, plants that will continue to grow, maybe biannually, maybe 2-3 years, then you'll replant. One plant that I love is the tree collard. I fell in love with that. It will keep growing and growing. Herbs like thyme and oregano will stay there, and you can continue to harvest from them. And then you have your like self-seeding plants like cilantro or Burnet salad. That's with a BU. Burnet salad is a perennial that may not look like an edible, but it's a really cool plant to grow. Calendula is used in teas and for salves and making things like that. And then I mentioned nasturtiums because the flowers are edible. But of course, yeah, those plants drop a lot of seeds, and once it gets away from you, it's really hard to get rid of. So I agree with you, Sarah, that it's a nice idea for nasturtiums, but they can get out of hand. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
I love what you guys were talking about, the native edibles, something that I'd like to learn more about. I'm definitely going to be writing some notes when you guys talk about that. I also grow medicinals a lot. I love growing. I go to the Horizon Sun Herb Farm all the way in Dixon, California to get my edibles or my medicinals. And that's just, that's when your clients really get into growing and maybe they want to grow their own medicine. I do want to give tips about how to get into a community garden in case your clients don't have a backyard or in case they don't have enough space in their backyard. And I know that all community gardens have a long wait list, and it'll take years if you ever get into it. But my trick, foolproof trick that I've gotten into this community garden here in Milpitas, my way was I volunteered. I volunteered for a plot at the Milpitas Unified School District, and I converted by sheet mulching all the weeds that were growing there. I put in my hard time, earned my money into creating that garden, and now that garden is essentially mine. I am working with the school district to get on board, and now that I haven't showed any really recent pictures, but now that the garden is irrigated completely, fully ready to grow, I have a feeling that the school district will probably want to take that land back. But what has happened is the garden coordinator and I built a relationship, and when a plot became available, I skipped the whole 200-person line and she gave me a plot. And so if you volunteer at a garden, build a relationship with the managers of those gardens, that is how you beat the line and get into a community garden every time.
So Derek is inviting all of us to volunteer and spend time on the weekends at the community garden so that we can all get, what do you call them, garden bed.
That's Rena's wish. Yes, it is.
Yes. I've been waiting for the last few years, and every time I hear there's a 2-year wait list, I'm like, oh, maybe in 2 years I'll have my own piece of land and I'll have my own I won't have to. I guess the reason that most people go to community gardens is because there's more space available to have a much larger community garden bed.
Well, never ever has a community gardener said, I don't have enough food.
Oh, okay.
So if you are volunteering and helping with someone, even if it's someone else's plot, you will always walk away with food. And the idea for a community garden is, yes, I don't have enough space in my backyard. I have one community gardener who has a huge backyard, but it's shaded. And so he has a plot so he can grow his tomatoes, which need full sun more than 8 hours. And we didn't get into shade tolerant edibles, but if you don't have full sun, you're very limited in what you can grow.
Yeah. So thank you, Derek, for the very interesting and informative presentation. I hope to learn more as the community gardens start opening up and we can start volunteering. So over the years, I've had many clients express an interest in edible gardens, vegetable gardens, and fruit trees. And some of the design considerations that I've come across is, first to ask them, how much time do they spend? Is it something that they, themselves are into gardening and they can maintain the garden? Or is it something that they have a gardener who maintains it? So this is one project that I worked on way back in 2012 in Houston. And the client wanted a New Orleans style garden. So it was, as you can see, a brick with concrete, kind of like a, patched up look, even though it's all completely new. And this, for this vegetable garden, she said she would pick the plants. So when I worked on the planting plan, I left that part, open so she could pick herbs, and the only plants that I selected was, I think, salvia, and the rest of them the owner or the client picks. So some of the other design considerations I find challenging are to find a fully sunny spot for vegetable gardens and fruit trees. Sometimes I've had clients want to plant teas, different types of teas that they have. I don't know the names of some of them, but these are some of the plants that I've come across.